Well, welcome everyone to the Coffee with a Closer. Today's session is with Laura Gray. So before we get into the conversation with Laura today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Sales Center. So approximately 3 years ago, Bernie Moreno, who is a pretty big name in Cleveland, he's currently running for senator, he gave a nice sizable gift to Cleveland State University for the Bernie Moreno Center for Sales Excellence. It is on the third floor of the College of Business, and it has 5 different rooms available for students and faculty to use to practice their sales skills, practice their negotiation and presentation skills. So it's a great center. We're really happy to have this center available to our students. So if you've never been there before, feel free to come on and stop by and check it out. If you'd like to reserve a room, you can go to our website and reserve a room and take advantage of the recording technology that is available there. So these are just a few photos from the center. And then after we talk with Laura, I will go ahead and tell you a little bit more about the sales program. So today I'd like to welcome Laura Gray from Maloney and Novotny. Maloney and Novotny is a CPA firm, and Laura currently serves as the Director of Client Services and Business Development, which I'm sure is a pretty big, fun job. And as you can see on the screen, she is also the founder and the Executive Director of iPride, which is a self-esteem and empowerment program. Sounds like a wonderful program. We'd love to hear more about that too, Laura. And Laura has a great story, so I'm really excited to have her here today to kind of share with you, her background and her experience in the sales environment and how she, ended up here at Maloney and Novotny, and a little bit more about her role at that company. She went to Bowling Green State University. We will not hold that against her. She is a Viking at heart, so we're really happy to be here, have her here with us. She's also an author, a live kidney donor, thank you for that, and I'm an advocate for sexual assault victims. So Laura, again, thank you so much for being here today.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, Tony, for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of Coffee with a Closer. I do like my coffee. However, I like alliteration too, because I am a writer. But I thought, wow, I actually never think of myself as a closer. I'm kind of an opener. You know what I mean? And my role in many ways is a door opener, a conversation starter. So yeah, I'm just really happy to be here. It also feels weird, let me tell you, because for most Zooms, I'm learning and absorbing and taking notes. So for me to be speaking, and I'm used to being quiet or muted. In this circumstance. So I really appreciate your time and your attention.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to get started. So take a moment here and tell us your story. Tell us where you went to school, and how did you get to where you are? So kind of tell us your story.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I grew up in Lake County, and I did go to. I'm the youngest of 8 children. I was the first one to go to college, and I chose to go to Bowling Green primarily because my mother felt it was far enough yet close enough. So I went to Bowling Green and majored in communications. Now, when I went away to Bowling Green, I actually started out in social work. Why I know more now why I may have chosen that than I did at that time as an 18-year-old. So, as an 18-year-old, I was sitting in English class, and a wonderful English professor, his name was Rob with 2 B's, and I don't know why I always have to say that, but it was Rob with 2 B's, Jackson. He had a long braid, and he wore what we called back in the day Jesus sandals, which are kind of like Berkeys. And he came up to me after class, and he said, and this was a freshman, and he said, "You're a really good writer. What's your major?" And I said, "Social work." And he said, "Why?" And I go, I'm not sure." And he goes, "I'd really like to see you do something with your writing and your communication." So I switched over in communications. I'm not sure why exactly I didn't go right into the business, but I went into communications. And for 2 summers, I actually interned at Fox 8, and now it's Fox 8. Then it was a CBS station. So I interned there for 2 summers, and ironically or interestingly, there were no such things as paid internships. So while we were all grateful to get an internship, I also usually had 2 other jobs during the summer to help pay for college. So going into my senior year, I decided, well, I don't want to go into communications and TV. I don't want to be a writer for local programming so from that respect, I learned that, okay, I don't want to do that. But as I'm going into my senior year, my father's like, okay, well, but you better figure something out. So I ended up graduating Bowling Green and communications major. I sent out the resumes, was looking for a job, and lo and behold, ended up with a marketing role at the United Way of Cleveland. So I started out there, and it was really interesting because I did get to use a lot of my writing, doing press releases, working on the newsletters. And they came up to me one day. I feel like somebody's always tapping me on the shoulder. And you know what? If you're lucky, that's how it happens. Okay? Because that is really the way of business, it's the way of quote sales, somebody pushing and pulling on your behalf because they recognize who you are as a person and your work ethic. So I got tapped on the shoulder and they said, hey, how would you like to work on the fundraising campaign this fall? And I've also learned to say, why not? Why not? Everything is a potential learning opportunity and experience. So I knew nothing about it, but I said, sure, why not? So I went into that role, and now it's more considered development. Back then, it was just hardcore fundraising, and so that, in a sense, was my first sales job as a professional. Because I did sales, working my way through college, etc. But so I went into the fundraising role, and I found it so fascinating that I was only 22 at the time, and I found it so fascinating that I would meet with these companies and go to these places and talk to these people about the vast needs in our community. So it was a little ironic that I ended up in that role because of my social work heart that I went to college for. But I would talk to them about the vast needs. So I was like building the case for this product that, oh, by the way, and if you contribute, you become a shareholder in our community, more or less. So I kind of look back and going, wow, that was pretty bold of me to just walk in, ask for money for a product that hopefully they'll never see or use. And yet, I was quote successful. I did very well in it, and I attribute that because my heart was in it. My heart was in it, and I believe that to be true. Fast forward to the role I'm in today. So I started off with United Way. I ended up moving to. I went through the management training program for United Way of America. So this was eons ago. But it was an esteemed program. And then from there, I went to the United Way of San Diego and lived there for a couple years. And my mother's health was not well, so I wanted to be closer to Cleveland. So I accepted a position at the United Way of Rochester, New York. And what was interesting when I worked in Cleveland, I did some manufacturing. Then when I went to United Way of San Diego, I worked with retail. And then as I moved over to Rochester, I was exposed and worked with the lawyers, the accountants, and the financial advisors. So I was building what ultimately was becoming the roadmap at the time. Oh, I'm not sure if you heard it. There must be a semi outside the office. But anyway, so I was building the roadmap to my life because I ended up coming back to United Way in Cleveland. And at the time, I was working with General Electric, which is Neal Park, which is still there, but it's much different now. And I was working with them on their fundraising. One day, I got a call in the office at United Way, and it was the guy, his name was Jay from General Electric, from GE Lighting. and he says, and I thought, oh God, because he goes, we don't want you to be our campaign connection or campaign coordinator anymore. And I'm freaking out because I'm thinking, oh God, who did I piss off at General Electric? I'm going to be in trouble. And he said, we want you to work for us. We want you to sell light bulbs. And of course, I'm like, okay, right. I'm going to sell a light bulb. I mean, I know you buy it in a 4-pack, you screw it in. And the other thing was, interestingly enough, I took the LSAT and I was planning to head to Marshall Law School. Again, I think that was my social work heart still kind of trying to push through. So he said that, and I said, no, that's okay. I just took the LSAT. I'm really not looking for a job. So, I have this conversation with my dad, and my dad was like, I don't know, GE is a pretty good company. So I thought about it again, reached back out, and I ultimately went to work for GE Lighting and Sales. So I started in consumer sales, and I was the first woman hired in the region. And it was the Cleveland region, but that encompassed Ohio and parts of Indiana. I mean, it was pretty vast, but nothing like half the country. It was manageable and drivable, but I was the first woman, and I actually thought that was kind of funny. I mean, I was like, what? I mean, I don't know. I have 5 sisters. I just never thought, you just do the job, and it didn't matter if you were male or female. So to be the first female, I'm like, God, you guys, you're way behind. And this was a while ago. This was 30 years ago. So anyway, so it's the first female hired in the region, and I did consumer sales. I had a few accounts, and that was fascinating to me because I learned every role that I've been in that I've said why not to, I have learned and I have grown and I have met some amazing, amazing people. Um, and to me, that's such an added value when you're a part of sales. And I've never been somebody that saw sales as a dirty word. It's like sales to me is relationships. Sales to me is listening. Sales to me is thinking. It's creating. It's inventing. It's the process. I mean, it's I don't know. I just love it. So I was selling light bulbs for a while, and then again, I get tapped on the shoulder, and they're like, you know what? We like what you do. We like what you're doing, but we want you to recruit more of you. So I moved into human resources for sales, and I just really have so much gratitude because the skills that you learn in sales are so transferable, that they saw, well, she can sell a light bulb, so maybe she can sell our company and recruit, because recruiting is also a form of sales. I mean, everything we do is. So I started to travel the country because there were not the virtual capabilities that we are also used to now. I traveled the country and I recruited for sales reps and I did sales training for the regions, and I just incredible opportunity and experience. At the time, I had a 2-year-old son, and my last trip was on Mother's Day to Kansas City, and my son was standing next to me with a Happy Mother's Day balloon. And I made a conscious decision that, unfortunately, the way of the world was that I was not going to be able to maintain that pace and really spend time with my son. So I made a decision to become a full-time mom. And I mean, you know what? And I even say that, I don't even like those words, because if you're a mom, you're full-time. It doesn't matter if you're working downtown at Key Bank or wherever, you're full-time, period. You're a full-time dad. So I take that back in a sense, but I hope you know what I mean. So I stayed home. I ended up having, 2 more children. So I have 3 sons. Stayed home for 14 years, and that flew by because at my going away party, I'm probably telling you way more than you need to know or want to know, but at my going away party at Nela Park, they said, oh, yeah, you'll be back in 6 months. And 14 years went by. I go through a divorce and needed to find a job. So, because I hadn't worked in 14 years, and so I had put out feelers to people I knew and people that I had come to know through my various roles, also people I went to school with, and said, hey, I'm looking. And I think, there's a lot to be said for don't burn any bridges. And I was never one to light a match unless it was to light our way going forward. So somebody I knew were a partner at another accounting firm in town. They created a position for me to work with community banks across the state of Ohio. And lo and behold, in that position was only, well, like 8.5 years ago, I went back to work full time and started working for that accounting firm. And about 5 years ago, I came over to Maloney and Novotny. And so here I am selling professional services. So when Tony refers to, I don't know, my journey, my career, I even sometimes stop in the middle of the road and I look back going, holy crap. I mean, San Diego to Rochester to Cleveland, light bulbs, fundraising, United Way agencies, and now I'm at a CPA firm. And I love it. I love it because to me, it is about communication. It's about listening. It's about creating. And I view, quite honestly, and Tony and I were just talking about this, yeah, yes, there's the external client or customer or prospect, but I view my colleagues the same way because if they don't really know me and trust me, and that's a two-way street, that's the best way we're going to work together and really sell, the outstanding services of the firm, Maloney and Novotny.
Thank you for sharing that story, Laura. I think it's such a great story because it's so different. And it tells our students that it's not always a straight shot. And, sometimes it's a zigzag, like you said, the cha-cha-cha, you never know. So our next question in the list here was, so thinking of sales in your long history of and diverse background, tell us about the biggest fish or the biggest sale, and then about the one that got away, and what are some lessons that you learned from each of those?
Okay, great question. I would say actually a recent big fish would be with the firm I'm at now with Maloney and Novotny, and in my role, which I enjoy, and I think partially because I'm the only one who does business development 100% of the time here. So they created this role for me. So that goes to show you that even though a communication skill may be considered a quote soft skill, I look at it as a leadership skill because, it's imperative and important no matter what your role is to really know how to communicate. And part of communicating is listening.
Mhm.
So while I'm out there networking, which, I do, not as much as obviously, lately because of the COVID and virtual, but I was at an event at a company on the west side and there was a speaker. And I must say, I started to tune out a little bit, admittedly, because we all can do that. And perhaps some of you are doing it now, and I totally get it. And the woman who happened to be seated next to me, I'm sorry, this story, it's just so me. The woman who's sitting next to me turns to me and she goes, "Isn't this riveting?" And I looked at her and I'm like, I just had this look on my face and I held up my phone and I actually was on Facebook at the time. And I know you're like, okay, inappropriate, disrespectful. And I would agree with all those things. For a moment, I was zoned out. She burst out laughing. She goes, "I can't believe that." And I go, "I know." So, anyways, we met for coffee. She's like, let's, so hit it off. By far, she has become, I would say within the last 4 years, the most solid referral source this firm has had.
Wow.
Through me. And part of that is I was real. I was real. I didn't look at her and go, "Oh, I know. Can you believe it?" Because that wasn't me, and I should I have been looking at Facebook? No, I shouldn't have been, and I agree with that. But at the same point, I was, and she said it was so refreshing that you were that real. So that was one, and it's been a solid referral source for our firm. The one that got away is actually, and again, the more you get to know me, because you've heard my roundabout story of how I ended up sitting where I am now, The one that got away was kind of interesting in the fact that it was for a community bank. And as I was at the other firm, and we were there looking at some audit work, and I actually happened to be at the time dating the bank president. And so, they brought in three quote vendors, and we didn't get the work. And going back to the firm, it really, the tail between my legs, because everybody's looking at me going, aren't you dating the president? And I'm like, hey, I don't know. It has nothing to do with me. So those are just two like very random stories that come to mind when you ask those questions. And, I mean, you just never know what you're going to encounter. Neither
Yeah.
one of them slowed me down or stopped me. I mean, it's just all part of the beautiful journey.
And actually, that's a great kind of question I don't have in this list that I gave you, but what are some things that you do to kind of rebound from those lost sales? Or,
Yeah.
oftentimes you do, I say hit your head against a brick wall when you're trying to, sell something, you get a lot of no's. What keeps you
Oh,
going?
yeah. Well, I'm going to be totally honest. Of course, as I always would be and should be. Initially, and I think it's because of the heart that I have and that we all have. Man, I was taking those personal. I'm like, what do you mean you don't like me? And it was like, obviously I didn't say that, but that's kind of what was going on in my head. And there was when I was at GE, I remember I was working with. This is going to sound super old, but I was working with Revco. They were one of my clients, which has now evolved to CVS. So I was sitting across from the buyer's desk, and he was like, we're not going to be buying GE Christmas lights this year. And I was like, well, and I am sure I had this look on my face, like, was it something I said? You know what I mean? And he's looking at me like, honey, this is a total business decision. But I had this look on my face, so it was really having to almost detach and not the no, and sometimes that it's not personal. And as I've learned and gone through the many positions in the various industries I've been in, that honestly, sometimes no is not right now. And you just fine tune that balance and that synergy when you circle back with people, but you also don't always have your hand out with the brochure. I think for me, the critical part of my success, and I say that boldly and humbly, is that it's all about the relationship for me. And if I want this is another side note here, if somebody connects to me on LinkedIn, because I'm pretty open on LinkedIn, so if you guys are on LinkedIn, please connect with me. If you want to meet for coffee, if you want to do a virtual coffee again, whatever you want to do, I'm totally open to it. But if somebody connects to me on LinkedIn and like within minutes or a day, they're sending me a message saying, so anyways, I'm like, you're selling me? Really? You're selling me, dude? You know what I mean? And build that relationship, because I believe this to be true. And I heard it when early on in my career, people buy from who they like. People buy from who they like. They want to deal with it. And if it comes down to a negotiation, they're like, Laura, we really want you to get this business because we really like you. This is where we need to be. You develop that open dialogue. I mean, that speaks volumes about who you are as an individual and wherever you're working.
That actually is a great segue into one of the questions on our list is how do you go about, first of all, cultivating these relationships with someone new? And then how throughout your career, how have you maintained relationships with clients and in your various organizations? I know you said Maloney and Novotny, you kind of pass them to the CPAs to kind of work those relationships, but how throughout your career have you work to establish new relationships and then maintain them over time?
Yeah, another great question. So, because to me, it is relationship. It's relationship building. It's like I said at the start, where I don't I've never really viewed myself, but I know there are such thing as closers, like people that really come in and close the deal and close the sale. And in many ways, I'm an island because I'm the only one here, 100% doing it. but it is about relationships and opening those doors. And a lot of that is just sincerity, being genuine, and like I said, not always having the brochure in hand saying, yeah, but do you need an audit? Oh, okay. And meanwhile, your head's already focused on your next meeting or the next call you need to make. You know what? Be real, be human, listen. I know there was a local company that I was quote working with the gentleman, because I am always weaving a web. I am always weaving a web. I mean, there's this expression, I don't know if it's 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon or whatever that used to be called. Well, I am that person. I'm like, well, how do you know this person? How do you know this person? And I have so much fun doing that. I mean, it just is, it's like a board game, but better. And I'm just constantly, but I'm not, my goal out of connections isn't to win. My goal may be to connect Tony to Paul, or because I'm like, it's like that old memory match game from when you're little babies, when you turn over, like, that's not a match. Oh, I got a match. Or when you find two socks, you're like, oh my gosh, I now have a pair. I have a clean pair of socks. I mean, it's that feeling. So it's that energy that you infuse into the relationships along the way that are people like, and this is a true story. So when I was at the other firm, I started trying to get some business with this company, and they weren't ready, and it wasn't the time. But I'd see different things on LinkedIn, or occasionally would reach out. Hey, I saw your company was doing this. Congrats to you guys. Whatever, all positive, just staying in touch. He reached out to me after I moved here. He said, "Hey, we want to work with you. Tell me more about this firm." At that point, they were ready. So they weren't ready before, but he kind of saw for who I was as an individual. And like that was a door opening for me to the rest of the firm. And it's really worked very well.
I want you to kind of go back to your life when you were at GE, because it seems like it's one of the larger organizations, and you again recruited multiple salespeople in that role. Can you tell us, if you can recall, how they operated their sales kind of office?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just kind of give us an overview of how that kind of worked, how they would bring in leads, how they pass leads off, how they worked with, sales and marketing together, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's really good question too. So and I know Tony, before the official Zoom started, you and I were talking about my role at GE with product management. So the product management, to me, product managers were like the really smart people that, and many of them had their MBA, and so I would, and again, this makes me laugh because I would just go in and go, I know, but this is how they want the Christmas display. And they're looking at me going, that's just not going to happen. I'm like, I know, but that's what they want. And so that was also a lessons for me to that my clients were also internal. I had to find ways to work with product management, because this had to be a win-win for them as well, because they had a different, metric that they were working off of. But and again, the times are so different now. But back then we had sales regions, and there was like teams, and it was a team effort, and I I love that camaraderie, and I completely I miss that. I miss that it's not where I'm at is not set up that way, but there's really not a need for it where I'm at now. But yeah, we working with marketing and promotions, and sometimes trying to just set up something special or unique. So there's like a lot of internal negotiations that, but that's where communication and listening, whether it's an external prospect or somebody in product management, instead of me walking away going, well, I can't believe you can't make that work. Well, oh, really? Well, maybe you should sit on their side of the desk and hear what their role really is about. So I hope that answered some of your
Yeah,
questions.
you did great. So let's see if there's any questions from our audience.
What I want to add too is that we actively, as I'm throwing this pitch in, we actively recruit at Cleveland State. Our managing shareholder is of the Cleveland office is a Viking alum, and I know we just did a recruiting. It was virtual again last about last month. And we also have a summer leadership program. We'd love to have some Cleveland State accounting or business students involved.
So like just starting off, like let's say like just getting out of college, like what would be like a good like way to like start going into like your career in terms of like internships and stuff? Like I don't really know how to like explain it, but
Are
well,
you
yeah.
that's a really good question. Are you a I'm assuming you're a business major, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a
Well,
business
me in
major.
particular, I'm my major is marketing.
Hmm.
So like what would be like a good way to like kind of like excel my career like going like out of college?
So that's a great question. And are you a third year or a senior or where are you at?
So I am a uh sophomore, I think,
Oh,
or
okay,
junior.
perfect. So it's like
One of those.
perfect. All right, so your second or third year. Yeah, for me, internships or even volunteering. I'm just going to put that out there now because, and I didn't plan to go into nonprofits, but that's where you're going to get because it really does. They look at the resume and people mean nothing by it. I mean, like say marketing or business, CPAs are different because we need as many as we can get right now. But marketing or business, they're going to look and go, oh, okay, well, you just graduated. So any type of volunteer, I don't care if it's for a church, if it's coats for kids or whatever, you put that on your resume. I wrote a newsletter for this. I did a press release for this because the more real life background that you can add to your resume, that's kind of what happened with me going to United Way. I mean, working in the marketing department, um, just exposed me to different areas, which ultimately moved me over into fundraising. So I would start kind of looking into nonprofits. Even I mean, United Way is such a big one, and it's not far from campus, or even maybe some on-campus programs you can look into if something you're interested in. Because the more real life type, and I don't like to say real life because we're all living a real life, but the experience that you can put. And you know what? If you want to continue this conversation, I would be happy to, schedule something with you.
Yes,
Yep.
there's paid experience and unpaid experience, but no matter what, it's still experience.
Right.
So I want to go, we have quite a few questions, which is great. So Morgan, I'm going to allow you to go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question.
Hi, Laura. I really enjoyed hearing from you today. Thanks so much. I'm glad that we had this opportunity to connect with you. But my question is, did you have any experiences as you went through your career? Were any decisions that you made that you regretted or anything you wish you would have done differently?
Well, that's a great question, Morgan. And you know what? I wasn't going to, this sounds like a shameless plug, but my book was just published and launched on October 5th. It's now one of the Amazon bestsellers. And I say my book, but I am one of 30 authors. So I have a chapter. And I also like to refer to it as a chapter because if I said my story, it sounds like my story's over. And I think we're all still writing every day. We all get the ability to create our story every day. So I'm answering it that way because one of the things that we were asked as the author is what would you do differently? What would you tell your younger self? And I would do nothing differently. And trust me, there are some gut wrenching, painful things in my past and huge mistakes. But I wouldn't be who I was or where I was right now. So I'm really glad that I I got to laugh a little more. I got to cry a lot. I moved 3 times when I lived in San Diego. I moved 3 times. I mean, I just kept moving and moving, and those were probably somewhat of mistakes. Um, but I'm not a person that looks at regret. I just embrace the lesson. It's a really good question, but I would say from a perspective, um, embrace the lesson.
So I have a question here from Deanna. It's on the chat. And I'm going to answer it too, because I think we can bring in the sales certificate here. She said, is sales a good job for introverts? And so I'll let you answer that, and then I'll answer from the sales center perspective.
Well, you know what? My honest answer is going to be I can't answer that honestly because I also don't live by labels. So you may refer to yourself as an introvert. I may not see you that way. And I wouldn't want to say what I think or believe is good for one person or another, just depending on how they may be viewing themselves. So I don't think that would be my place to say. I will say that there are aspects of this role that if you may be more comfortable or uncomfortable, and that there's a lot of stuff that's on the back end of this that I'm not very good at. So but it pushes me, it challenges me to expand my skill sets, to grow as a human being. Maybe it's not a quote lifetime, but I don't think there's a lifetime profession for any of us. You know what I mean? If we're lucky, we're just going to keep getting tapped on the shoulder and keep learning.
And I would say from a sales center perspective, we have the sales certificate, which is something where you can start learning some new skills to become a little bit more extroverted before you leave the safety of the university, and be able to, communicate better and have more presence and give better presentations. That'll help you in no matter which area you go into in life. So the sales certificate might be something for you, Deanna. I'm going to jump over here to Pooja's question. She says, in sales, there's a lot of dealing with people. How do you handle it if there's an environment? How do you handle if there is anything? Pooja, are you here? Can you clarify our question? Handle if there's anything environment or a
So
dilemma.
I just missed the word negative. So if there is like any negative environment or any situation that if there is any dilemma, so how do you handle that kind of situation?
Sure. Do you mean a toxic environment, or do you mean like I'm facing resistance to a sale?
Maybe both of them, maybe, because there are so many person involved in sale, and many people have different kind of opinions in different issues. So
Yeah,
in that case, how do you handle that?
that's a great question, Pooja.
Yeah.
So I will say for me, because I can only answer for myself because you're asking me. I can only control myself or my behavior. I cannot control how somebody receives me or how they respond. So my ultimate goal is to always focus on my integrity, my knowledge of what I am bringing, whether in this case, it's accounting services. And if it goes anything less than that, I walk away. And in a toxic situation in sales, when I was in Rochester, I remember this guy, a financial advisor guy, who, about his donation. And he said to me, well, if you come pick it up personally, I'll increase the amount. And I was like, keep it. Keep it. I am always true to myself. And fortunately for me, especially now being at Maloney and Novotny, I work with rock solid people. You can only control yourself. And if you need to tighten your circle, you tighten your circle. It's a really good question.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Professor.
Our next question is from Tanisha. She has her hand up. Go ahead, Tanisha.
Hi. I was wondering, as you went through like college or like after college, moving into your career, if you had a mentor that helped you along the way, and what advice would you have for me to find a mentor?
Yeah. Well, you know what? You reach out to me. If I can be of any help to you, I will. I'm going to answer this in a couple ways because I tend to do that, but I don't know if that's the sales in me. I feel like all my answers become a tree. Like they start in a trunk and then I start to branch off.
Mhm.
So part of the reason why I started iPride, which is my youth empowerment program, is kind of a mentorship. So that's just innate to who I am as an individual. To answer your other question about did I have a mentor, I've had many. And I've been very, very fortunate. One, I'm aware of it. I'm aware of that it's going on, but I was always open to it. When I had a summer job at a company, because I told you I had internships that were unpaid, so I had to get paid. So I had a summer job at a company. And this woman, she happened to be in human resources. Her name was Sheila Meister. She was, I don't know where she's at in life. She was so wonderful to me and so nurturing and so supportive as my role as a young female college student. So that was like a summer mentorship. She's always very willing to listen to me with my questions. And then I would say Rob with 2 B's, my English professor. I considered him a mentor. And then I moved into, at GE, United Way, the gentleman that was my boss. Then boss to me is such a horrible word. They're going to boss you around. I'm like, really? You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't have a love for that word. But anyways, my boss at that time, who's now the president of the Akron Community Foundation, he has pretty much been a lifelong mentor. Somebody who knew me when I was 22 that I could reach out to and go, what do you think? So here I am. I'm 55. And I still consider him a mentor, but he's also a friend. And at GE, there was somebody like that. So I think it's you being open to it, you being aware and receptive of it. Because you know what? Mentor, it sounds good, does sound good, but guess what? They're not always going to be nice. They're
Yeah.
not always going to be nice. I was getting a little bit going, back it off. You shouldn't have said, I'm like, what? I was right. Well, maybe I wasn't. You know what I mean? So please reach out to me, whether it's LinkedIn or I'm sure Tony could share my contact information. I would love to stay in touch with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question is Ziad. I hope I said it correctly.
You did.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, this is Ziad. Laura, thank you for the for your story. It's a good one. So, just my quick question is, what are the challenges that you faced, throughout your career? First being a female working in environments such as manufacturing environments like GE and those folks. You got a lot of men over there that are trying to overtake everybody, right? So what are the like, I guess, the advice you have for us young kids here trying to learn and grow in our careers, or finding our new the next step that we have to take in life? So
Yeah.
what do you got for us there?
Well, okay, Zayed. I love your question. I love your youth. And really the future does belong to the youth, okay? And I say when I get asked, and maybe this makes me quote a little different about like the female, even though I said, yeah, I was the first female hired in the region, I was also walking around going, really? Really? Because I guess I just viewed myself as somebody who wanted to be smart, wanted to work hard, wanted to succeed, wanted to bring value. Oh, you mean, oh yeah, and I'm a woman. Okay. I mean, so I was all those other things first, and I think because of, so back to Pooja's comment and questioning, I didn't lead with that, so it never honestly was an issue. I mean, I had the United Way example about, oh, I'll increase my donation, and I was doing a United Way meeting at a Sears store in California, and I said, okay, I'm giving my whole thing. And I said, is there any questions? And this guy raises his hand. He goes, will you go out with me tonight? I'm like,
No.
well, what did I do? I go, next question. I mean, so, I some of it is my own humor and deflection, but I really stand by my integrity and my honesty, who I am as an individual,
Hmm.
as an individual human being. And I think that I really feel that we are now growing into, and I hope, a culture of just acceptance of who you are, whom you identify with, but what value are you bringing? Are you listening? Are you a good person? Are you kind? And in some ways, I feel like there should be a class taught on kindness.
Right.
We're taught so many other things and nuts and bolts, but a lot of kindness, a little kindness goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, just what drove my question was I have three girls at home and three
Oh,
little kids and a boy. So,
yeah.
you know,
Oh,
just
wow.
some advice to see what I should teach my kids, you know, growing up. So, but
Teach them kindness, teach them love, listen. What they say matters. My youngest just is 18. I have three sons. My youngest is 18. And I was never blessed with a daughter, but I will say, and this is just me, not having both, would you treat your daughter differently? Probably not.
I wouldn't, but the world would, right? That's where the
But her
challenges that we're
but
facing.
her world is you. Her world is you. So what she learns as she's being raised by you is love, that
Right.
she'll carry herself in love and learn how to self-love over all else.
Correct. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right, I have a question here on the chat from Brahmini. I think she's still on. Brahmini says, how do you know if you have the personality for a business career? Because she's also kind of in the same quandary, thinking about being a counselor, not sure which way to go.
Well, that again, wow. Does that question from Laura Gray? Because it does sound like how I started off. Well, you know what? I don't, that's hard. Again, it's hard for me to answer because who defines your personality? Like, who defines normal? Who defines roles? I think my thing is you get into it. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, nothing's forever. I mean, I tell my sons that nothing's forever. You don't like it? And now I'm not saying quit. I'm not saying give up. I'm not saying, oh, I don't like so and so at work, so I'm gonna find another job. Oh, really? Huh, that's too bad. Because you could be missing a really good opportunity. And whatever that difficulty or that challenge is, it's going to be potentially your greatest teacher in life. Because you don't learn from an easy test. You walk out of that test going, well, that was easy. You know what I mean? It's the ones you really have to think and study. That's where you're going to learn and grow. So my advice on that, I sound so old when I say that. And my friends are joking with me. They're going, "Did you become the extra credit person now in your career?" Like, I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I'm the person that people get extra credit for." But my advice would be, try it. Try it. You don't like it? Switch. Switch, but do it with passion, do it with conviction, and open your heart to, because I think anything's possible. Because we are the creator of our lives.
Absolutely. Dean, I know you had your hand up, but then you took it down. But you were next in line if you still have that question.
Sure. Well, first off, just thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. I love what you were saying about be real, be honest, be yourself. But I was wondering, how do you well, first, do you tailor your approach, with different people in your network, and how do you begin to tailor that approach to sort of meet them halfway and sort of serve their needs?
Yeah, awesome question. So, and I know I come back to it a lot, but number one, you got to be real. You got to be who you are, okay? But, kind of like a sports analogy, though, if you're playing against a team that's going to run, well, why are you shifting to a pass defense, okay? So you stay in line with where they're at. And if I know if I know that Mary over at, company A, um, she's only an emailer. So, email her once in a while. Or so I tailor it that way. If I know that, because there are some people still around, pick up the phone and call me. They want to hear voice, and you can get a lot done in one conversation compared to 5 emails because there's lost in translation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I tailor it. I'm always real. I'm always myself, which is first and foremost. But part of that is your listening skills, because Mary may not say that she only likes to email, but she's never sent me a text. She's always emailed me. So I'll email her. You know what I mean? So you kind of correspond. You get on their field, but you're always yourself.
Got it. Thank you so much.
And we're going to do one last question before we go to the closing here is, how do you know when it's time to stop pursuing a client?
Well, many of them tell me. Many of them tell me, going, stop. We told you, But that's because I'm pretty open with them. I'm pretty, if you kind of develop a little bit of relationship, now I'll just reach out and go, you need that review yet? Are you sick of your accountant yet? Whatever. And I'm not one to compare who we are. That's the other thing I would say from selling. There's some things like on a light bulb, I kind of had to point out the filament wire. I had to print out the coating on the inside of the light bulb, et cetera, et cetera. In the case of services, what you always want to do, well, I don't like to say that. I shouldn't say that way because I don't like to be so extreme. What you always want to do, one way to do it is not to compare yourself. Because guess what? If I start to compare myself to firms XYZ, then that's what they also do. They'll compare. So it's best you stand on who you are, what you believe in, what your firm has to offer, all those strengths. And after all that, if they're still at that point not interested, then you kind of dial it back. Maybe 6 months, I'll put a note on my file, reach back out, happy holiday, whatever the case may be. And then, because you've already sold them and informed them, that's when they start to buy.
Very good. I noticed we do have a couple faculty in the audience. We have Dr. Paul Mills, who teaches in our sales center. We also have Ed O'Donnell, and I believe we have Leah, Dr. B is here as well. So for the faculty here, do you guys have any questions for Laura?
Hi, Tony. Hi, Laura. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Paul.
Paul. No, I just want to thank you so much for giving us your insights. I mean, I was interested in your comment earlier. We were talking about introversion and extroversion. So one of the things I just want to impress on folks is that a lot of research has been done on what makes a successful salesperson and what sort of personality traits, because there's obviously a huge interest by recruiters in trying to pick those people that would make. And so they've studied empathy and they've studied all kinds of things. And I think the results are, it's really difficult to predict that. And so you may think, oh, I'm an introverted person, sales isn't for me. Some of the people I come from industry who have made the best salespeople have been folks that, when they go to a party, they're a little bit of a fly on the wall. But they ask great questions and they have good insights and build strong trust with their customers. So we're finding in the sales program, and I know you had Naraya on earlier, before the thing, she was one of our sales students that entered into a competition and did really well, that she was up against folks that had all sorts of different inclinations and backgrounds and personalities. So I encourage everybody to sort of take a sales course and see how it fits for you.
Paul, if I can just say, Paul, that is a really, really good perspective, because guess what? The fly on the wall, he's listening. She's listening. Okay. And sometimes a little bit of Laura can go a long way, and people are like, oh God, you know what I'm saying? So that's why when that question too, I encounter in my field with my peers, the range and the diversity of personalities, which makes it just that much better, I think.
And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the sales certificates if you're not familiar with them. So the first sales certificate we offer through the Bernie Moreno Center for Sales Excellence is pretty much for all of our students in the College of Business and throughout the university, from the standpoint that you really learn those skills that Laura talked about good listening, how to establish relationships, how to negotiate, work on your presence, work on your persuasion, all of those things. So I know this is kind of a challenging slide to read, but if you have taken some basic core courses in business, such as the business communications course, the introduction to marketing course, introduction to management course, you may have some of the courses already required for this particular certificate. It is 4 courses, 2 of them are required in sales, and then 2 others are electives, but are a part of the business core. If you're interested in the certificate, I would definitely reach out to business advising. It doesn't cost you anything. There's no test you have to take. It's really just making sure that you get the appropriate courses to enroll in the certificate. And again, it's for every major because it's teaching you those fundamental skills in regards to relationship building, hence the title professional selling and professional sales. We also recently, this last year, started to offer the professional selling minor. It's a little more robust, really more robust, focusing on sales, really has the analytical piece available, as well as an experiential opportunity, I believe is something that can be incorporated into this particular minor. So if you're interested in this, again, just reach out to business advising at CSU, and they can work with you to get you into this minor. We're really excited to have this here. Dr. Paul Mills, again, who's just spoke, he's really, works with our students to get them involved in sales competitions, to really build, again, a lot of experience in you before you actually get out into the field. Let's see what else. So we do have quite a few graduates. So here is James. Here's a little testimonial for James. He's out there selling his heart out right now. Paul, do you know where James is working now?
I don't remember, to be honest with
I
you.
don't
We've had
remember.
all of our, so many of our students that graduate are in demand. And so, you might know, Tony, when we started off, we had 4 and then
Yeah.
25 and then up to 50 last year. So I got a lot of folks that are leaving with career ready skills.
Absolutely. So what I'll do is after this is over, I will send this presentation out to you guys along with the one-sheeters regarding the certificate and the minor. And again, if you're interested in enrolling in any of those programs, just feel free to reach out to business advising. And then I do have, Tanisha is asking again for your contact information, Laura. So I will make sure I add that to
Feel free.
the email. But I want to thank you again for spending your lunch hour with us today, Laura.
Oh,
Everybody,
gosh,
let's
this was fun.
give Laura a round of applause if we
Thank
can.
you.
Virtually.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you. This concludes our program for today. I thank everybody for being here. We do have a few others I'm working on in the future, so be sure to sign up for our mailing list so you can be invited to future closing events. And Laura, thank you so much again for
Thank
your
you,
time.
Tony. Thanks.
Thank
for
you,
all
Laura.
students.